sponsor the event and we want to talk, but we said, we don't just want to be a commercial, right? You guys are in the sponsorship industry. We want to be part of the event. And one of the things that we go through, right, is we work with actually, I'm going to get into this a little bit, more brands and agencies than we do with the likes of you. And so from that perspective, Bridget said, what do you know that might be valuable to a group of activation folks who are sitting here having those relationships with those brands and agencies? One other quick call out. Just so you know, you probably already know this. You set the global bar in sponsorship. We have customers in England, Hungary, London. And you want to know the first question they ask us? How many NFL clients do you have and what are they up to? I want to be like them when I grow up. So congratulations, and once again, we're really excited to be here. Okay, so what do brands want in 2022? That's going to be the first part of this. I'm going to go through probably only about 15 minutes. Two things that go with the first part of the segment. They are what I wish I had or knew or did when I was selling sponsorships. Whether it was convincing people that it was worthwhile to spend money and advertise, people actually do live in the state of Montana. They do care about the Bobcats. And the second thing is, you've probably already heard these things before. But based on our brand experience over the last 5 years, there's some frustrations that come from the brands that come out in IEG reports and such. Third thing that's going to come with that is 3 specific templates and takeaways that can potentially change the conversations that you have with your brands, your agencies, your relationships that you have. Then we're going to bring up the peer panel. Thank you, peers and panel, for taking the second half of this and not making me stand up here the whole time. Okay, so 3,000 assets, Montana State, 2.5. Probably wondering who's the half. Graduated ski bum, her words, not mine, right? But the pain of activation is felt throughout the sponsorship industry, both from the brand side as well. And so that's what I'm going to share today. There are 3 things. Now, one of the things that is really unique about Trak is that we have the perspective of 85% of our users are brands and agencies, right? And so if anybody, any customer who has worked with us, and I'm going to make a joke about the Eagles for a second. They said, it's nice to meet you in person. There we are. I said, how many meetings have we had in the last 3 months? I'm like, I don't know, 50? I was like, whoa, easy, nice to meet you in person. I'm just kidding, they were really nice about it. But the point is it takes a lot to set up Trak. Every single partnership portfolio is different, whether you're buying or selling them. And so I kind of have this analogy of like, how lucky we've been to be on the sidelines for these brands and agency discussions I'm going to go through, that we're kind of like the architect that's writing the blueprint. The agency is sitting there, if there's one, the brand is sitting there, and they're saying, here's our partnership portfolio, here's what we want to accomplish, can your system manage it for us? And so we're kind of like a fly on the wall that's trying to figure out how we should build the house. And because we're close to those conversations, that's where a lot of these insights are coming from now. I'm protecting the guilty and the innocent. There are no brand logos, no anything up here for a specific reason. But these do come from our implementations of the 50 meetings, potentially, that it takes to stand up Trak, and from those brands and agencies. So, what are we really talking about, right? From the brand's perspective, we're going to be in their shoes for a little bit. And when we hear the words, and you're going to laugh when you see some of these, like, yeah, I've heard that 1,000 times in the last 2 years. But what does the brand think about it? Why do they care about those things, and how can we actually improve those conversations? So, who's heard this before? I need data. Okay? There's tons of data, right? Thanks for the show of hands, by the way. That was really good. I should have done that, and then everybody would have been like, yeah, I get it. They need data. But here's what they really need, right? So like, there's evaluation providers out there, and we support all of them, and they're awesome. But I promise you, if you don't ask, you don't actually know what data they need. Okay? And that paragraph there was a quote that was done by a sponsorship marketer that was overseeing 4 or 5 DMAs and a $15 million budget. And we said, what kind of data are you looking for? I need data to grab my CMO's attention with the same precision and certainty as my digital teammates. Okay? So I will be honest, some of that is in an exported PDF from your social listening tool. Okay, and I'm going to go through some specific examples and even an exercise you can do with your clients that can uncover what is grabbing your CMO's attention. By the way, I'm using the term CMO. It can be board, it can be CEO, right? It can be whoever is giving that person that $12 million budget. Okay, now usually the form of this, which are these two kind of charts here, IEG, what do sponsors want year after year after year, top 2 every single time. Usually that comes out quantitatively as fulfillment reports and help and assistance measuring ROI. Okay, so let's go to the boardroom really quick. Okay, CMO is running a meeting. You have 3 people sitting in the room, and you have your sponsorship marketer that's taking up one of those seats. Any guesses on who's in the other seats of a room like that? Make it up. What else? Who else sits on a marketing department? Digital, pay-per-click, data warehouse, marketing operations, right? And you have the sponsorship marketer there. And what are they trying to do? They're trying to connect the narrative to how is our marketing department performing? Okay? And there's guiding principles in that room that have nothing to do with sponsorship. They have nothing to do with tickets. So you can imagine, right, sitting in a brand shoes, sponsorship marketer, $12 million budget, 5 DMAs, and they're going, all right, what's your one-sheeter? Okay? What's your one-sheeter to say how you've helped deliver a 12% market increase across those 5 DMAs? Do you think they show, and no offense, we have a recap tool, but do you think they show the recap tools? Do you think they show a PowerPoint? They don't. Because guess what the person next to them is showing them? Hey CMO, you gave me $1 million last month, and that produced $14 million in sales. And that's it. That's the math. Right? And so what you need to do, the next few steps of this is how do you prepare your sponsorship marketer? But by the way, we all know that that might not be their only job. We're lucky if we have that client that gets it and understands the industry. But sometimes they're the community sponsor, right? Or they're community initiatives. And so let me give you a specific example. This is a client that we work with. That is all that this person is allowed to put on his one-sheeter in that boardroom meeting. And raise your hand if you know what direct revenue is. Neither do I. But I can tell you that we send a lot of data into their CRM to map the direct revenue that's coming from their partnerships. Okay? Influence revenue. It's going to be a little bit of a hospitality play, right? Same data is going back into contact records. The only thing that he's allowed to present in that boardroom is impressions. Once again, it's like, wait, nobody cares about impressions. And that's why partners are all different, right? Special little snowflakes. And that's why going back to the first one is they need data. That's it. They're not sure what data, right? But it's guided by their boss. Okay, next one. Oh boy. Next one. I challenge you to rethink the way that you talk about partnership goals and objectives with every single one of your partners. It's a very subtle difference, right? By the way, this is the slide where you're like, yeah, I've heard this before, thousands of times. What is sponsorship's role in the marketing objectives for the business? What role do you play? And I promise you, the sub-bullet point of that will be a data point or two that you've never heard before or that you've not tracked. Then that goes to marketing objectives and business objectives. Number 4, it's competitive, right? Your brand client sitting in that boardroom, 5 other people who compete for budget. Okay? So when you think about a brand's competitiveness, about getting a share of wallet from the CMO, all you have is the one-sheeter and those 3 pieces of data points. They don't even get to show the big sign in the stadium or the proof of performance picture. Okay, who does this? Sponsorship asset number 1 is accomplishing partnership objective number 1. You all do it, some form, right? Okay? Let me add something to this. Asset, which accomplishes partnership objective, which accomplishes the business objective. Okay? This is the missing component that you're letting your brand client connect the dots. They might not be connecting the dots. They might be sitting in that boardroom and able to convey the message well enough. But if you want to become a strategic partner to your sponsorship clients, this is the third connection point that you have to make. Okay, so how do you actually do that? Okay, I'm going to show you an exercise. The agency that ran this exercise with this client was $500,000 a year type of agency. Okay? And this is the exercise, and I'm dead serious when it's this simple. What maps to what? Right? As you think about the asset mix, do all of your clients, with you in the room strategically, can they map this with why those assets exist to which partnership objectives that accomplish which business objectives? Okay, so this term is called a value stream map. This is a simple exercise. This is a template, by the way, that we'll get to the end of this, that we'll provide to you, and you can have it for free and use it. Okay, another specific example. Who would have thought that you could map the partnership objectives to these business objectives? I can tell you the one that makes sense to me, the bottom one on the left, right? We hear that one a lot. CEO likes to see the logo on the shirt. But staff retention, recruitment rates. I'm going to enter in another one. I think Kellen told me this is the contact that just needs to check the box. That gets handed the sponsorship portfolio that's like, just make sure that we execute our contracts. That happens too, right? Now I would convince you that there could be some other stuff that we could explore with them. But really what you're trying to do is understand how we actually help them correlate the statistical information about our partnership back to business objectives. And you can help with this, right? You can help with this by changing some of the conversations that you have, because there's a term that we use in sales that's called you get relegated to who you sound like. So the way that I would put that in activation terms is if you show up and you talk about the print ad and the size of it and the specs of it, then you're going to talk to people who solve those problems. If you show up and you talk about business objectives and partnership objectives, you are going to get sent to the principal's office if the person you're talking to doesn't know what that actually means. And that's okay, because the principal's office are the person that probably gave that person the budget. Okay, and this is the last one. And if you're not considering this in the way you build relationships, they do want to do a good job, right? And at the end of the day. But doing a good job is them sitting in the boardroom and defending their sponsorship budget into how it aligns with the marketing budget. And the agency has a role in there too, right? So we want to make sure that they're able to accomplish the things that they want to accomplish. Because by the way, the agency, if you've never thought about it in this way, they're hired to fill the gap between budget and objectives. So what I just showed you, right, that value stream map, there's some complexity to it, there's some secret sauce. That's a $500,000 problem to that agency, right? So how could you provide that much value in your partnerships? Okay, so 3 things you can use now. Kick off a partnership with a strong agenda to create these conversations right from the very beginning. You probably have one, but there maybe are some good ideas that you can take away from it. What are some KPIs that we've seen on that third box? There is an entire list inside of this template that I want you to use, and then the value stream map exercise. Try it with a client that you're comfortable with. See what it feels like. So, if you want to scan the QR code, the template, and actually the QR code that's on the back of our one-sheeter that was in your registration bag is also the same QR code. It will go right to a Google Doc. You can copy and paste. You can take it anywhere. No email address to identify. We will not follow up with you, but it's free to use. And so that's what we wanted to do as we get through the content. So I'll leave that up there for a second, but if I could grab my panel, if if they want to come up here while I hand off the mic, we'll move on to the next section. I am more than happy to take questions while they're coming up. And just thank you, by the way, so I'll put that back up just in case the cell phone's out. It's kind of a good sign. Testing. Oh. There you go. Okay, so you have the mic behind you. Kellen, can I start with you? Just intro, just in case people don't know who you are. Name, team, how long you've been with the club? Sure. Or wherever you want to go.
Sure. Hey everybody, Kellen Bengosh, Kansas City Chiefs. I'm going on year 12, which I know in the activation world is like 8 years too many. So I'm happy to be here. I will also tell you that if you use code SUMMIT22 on your conversations with Trak, it's free for life. That's what Gabe told me, so stick to Gabe. Thanks for the bank account.
Hi everybody, I'm Sandy Young. I'm with the Denver Broncos, coming up on 20 years in June, so I don't know what that means. I spent a little time in our marketing world too, but I'm happy to be here and thanks for having me.
Yeah, Sean Engel with the Seahawks, and I've been with the team for 13 seasons and really excited to talk with everybody here.
Hi again everybody, Bridget with the Browns. This will be my 19th season. Started managing the Browns backers program for about 4 years and then transitioned to corporate partnerships.
Okay, so we just went over, we'll connect it back to the existing content that we just went through, and then we'll go through kind of moving into 2022 and what your secret sauces are, if you will. Okay, so what are the challenges in managing partnerships? 2022, post-pandemic, what are the trends you see? What are some demands that you're seeing that are new? And what has worked for yourself or your teams as you approach some of those? So Bridget, I'm gonna start with you and then we'll work down towards Kellen.
Sure, I mean honestly, 2022, I feel like it's all about flexibility with our partners. We've always been flexible, right, with our partners, but their needs are so different now. Some of them are still bouncing back from 20 and 21. Their business objectives have changed. They're going back to the awareness piece of the funnel, part of the funnel, opposed to maybe where they were a couple of years ago. What we're seeing, I would say, from a trend perspective is getting back to that personal kind of touch and feel with the fans. I think 3 years ago when we were at the summit, we were talking a lot about digital and social content, and that's still important to our partners. But we're hearing more and more, hey, how can we had this conversation with a couple of partners, how do we do a real giveaway at a game? I mean, like kind of the traditional stuff, but we want to get back into the game day experience, the activating the right way, and then also what's the feedback from the fan as they're approaching our booth or take part in our activation? What's that feedback? So it's kind of getting back to that personalization with the fans and being present where they are. Because I feel like they're looking forward to going to games again. They're looking forward to going to training camp. And our partners want to be there with them again. So it's kind of cool. That's fun to be able to kind of create activations where they're present and providing an enhanced experience.
Yeah, I'd echo everything you just said as far as just getting back to what we call normal and just excitement around game day. An opportunity that I see for us is through the 2021 season was when we recapped with partners, including our business intelligence team on all that. And that went so successful that that's going to be probably how we communicate with fans moving forward, or with the partners moving forward, is getting our BI team more involved and getting them face-to-face time with the clients, because as you could show from your presentation, like that is the stuff that makes them make decisions real time, and I feel like that making real-time decisions is the most important thing for partners rather than the end of season recap. So that will probably be our biggest focus for the upcoming year.
I think for us, and you touched on it a little bit, Cameron, in the deck, I think it's this kind of complexity that we're finding in our partnerships now. So I've talked to a lot of teams that are like, we're out of assets, so we're having to get more creative, and I think we feel that too, where whether it's, creating new platforms that are not traditional, or it's now international, home marketing areas that we're all trying to figure out. Just continuing to evolve and get creative, but at the same time, understanding that a lot of people's attention spans, or even partners' attention spans, are smaller and quicker and more concise. So it's kind of managing that complexity with also just keeping it simple, having them be able to remember 3 things at the end of the day, or what data points or what measuring sticks, and just kind of where you net out somewhere in the middle is really what we're finding. And then how does data come into that, and what are your deliverables across the board?
I think one of the things we've seen, to kind of again add on to what you guys have said, is I think relationship is really important again. You know, I think we've seen a lot of turnover on some of the agencies and accounts that we work with. So we're new to them, they're new to us. I think to have some of the conversations, to be able to go to Cameron's level and go through this value stream map here, you got to build trust, right? And so being able to get a partner or an agency or someone to trust you, to understand that you understand their business, they're not going to just give you that information. They're not just going to, they don't know that you care about what they're doing. So you got to get back out there. Relationship's been a big piece that we've stressed with our team. And then I think the other thing too is I think COVID sped it up. I don't know that it changed it completely. I think it just accelerated the timeline. We forced a lot of partners to have to get more nimble. And now they actually kind of like it, right? There's a lot of assets that you guys, and this scares the hell out of some people in the club level, is there's assets that as a team you have to sell, right? Ownership built them, it's fixed spaces, it's stuff that traditionally should carry a big number. And brands are getting smarter and they're saying, I don't know if you didn't give that to me during COVID because it didn't have any fans or we couldn't get access or whatever. I actually liked taking that value and putting it over here that I can measure. I can come back with some impressions, I can come back with some numbers. Can I stay there? Can we just keep doing this as opposed to going back to what's kind of been the original deal? So I think that will be the interesting part for us in 22 is how many of those temporary make goods are now permanent.
Awesome. Thank you. And so actually related, Kellen, I'm going to come back to you because we were talking about this last night. But when you talk about those different metrics, right? I call it the snowflake effect, right? Salesperson sells 15 things to 3 different partners, and there's 75 different metrics in the way that they would map that, right? So like value stream map is per partner, not per asset, right? Because the thing is going to accomplish something different. So when you're going and having those conversations, when you do bring up metrics, it can be leading with research can end up affecting it negatively or positively, right? You got to be prepared for that. So how do you bring it up in a way where it's a relationship building moment where you're not screwing your partnership, right? Because you know that it may not do that. So Kellen, I'll kind of pass it to you when it comes to metric conversations and the delicateness, not a word, that you would put to it.
Yeah, for sure. I think for us, it's a lot of really just trying to understand from that individual's perspective. How are you being evaluated? Why did you do this partnership? What's really the driving force, right? Your company could have spent money in anything. You chose to spend it with us. Why? Why did you pick my team or my brand in my region? Why did you pick this region? Whatever it is, right? So really trying to understand the company side of it, but also the individual side of it in terms of what's in it for you. How can I make you look good, right? Because if I can make you look good in that boardroom, we've got a really good chance to grow this partnership, to renew this partnership, whatever that means. And sometimes the answer is just simple as, I just need to show that we did everything, right? That we got the value out of it. And that's okay too, right? Like we all have a ton of partners. They don't all have to have the exact same treatment, right? Kind of meet them where they are and whatever they're being judged against. I think that's been a big piece for us. That really lets you know who they are, what they're looking at, and what they're being evaluated against.
Yeah, I think well said. And one thing we've tried to do is just really take it back to basics. So we started this practice a couple of years ago where at every kind of, recap or just season kickoff meeting, we just ask our partners, like at the end of this year, answer this question. The partnership will be successful if, and we just ask them to fill in the blank. So you kind of get them just open-ended talking. It's worked really well, although Brooke from the Broncos will laugh because we had this, I'll leave the partner nameless. But we tried this just last week with one of our partners, and they were like, okay, we're gonna measure this whole next year based on brand consideration. Like, consideration tie our brands together, and we're like, okay, how do you measure that? And they're like, we can't. So, I mean, it works sometimes, it doesn't others, but at least we know they can't measure it. So if nothing else, we got some information from that, and we can measure it, or at least try to show up, and to your point, make us look like the heroes in that boardroom, because we know they can't measure it on their own.
Yeah, I think it has to just do with asking what their why is, and some people have a really hard time answering that. And That's what we get asked internally from our other groups as far as what the partners' whys are, because once you get that answer, just everything can just run smoothly. And we have similar to both of you guys, the value of the partnership with the team, but getting that why, walking through the next steps of how to innovate, how to execute, and then measuring that to report for the next year is really how we go about doing it. And I think it goes back to the why.
I agree with all of it, and just to add on to that, it's also really important to do the real-time check-ins. It's not the mid-season, it's not the end of the year, and then you're trying, to your point, if it's a tough conversation, that should have happened months ago. If something wasn't pacing the right way, how do we shift? How are we nimble with our partners? But to also echo what you guys, it's a marriage. Like, they need to tell us what's going to work in this relationship, and we can tell them how we're going to provide a lot of great benefit in this relationship as well. So it's hard to get that out of them sometimes, but if you consistently ask, and as you're having those real-time conversations with your partners, getting them to trust you and trust the process, like it will come. I promise you it will come. And once you understand what their why is, and you're having those consistent conversations, it just makes it easier at the end of the year to report back, and then also pivot quickly to plan. Like we're always trying to plan ahead. Instead of harping on what happened over the past few months, how do you take what you've learned and then quickly apply it to the next year?
Cameron, the only thing I was going to add to that, I think that's a great point. We started, I think, a few years back, it was like for all of the shared events, or like insert recap or something like that. We were kind of going through the motions of just like, this is what we think the partners want. And we had this kind of rinse and repeat every year. And we felt like almost we couldn't ask them, do you want this recap? Or what do you want in a recap? It was like, this is what we do, and we're the experts, and we're just gonna deliver it. And luckily we have really smart people at the Broncos and people that come in and question practices and say like, why are we doing this for this partner? They don't even open it. And so we were really able to kind of rethink it to where it wasn't efficient for the staff. We were going through the motions, and so really to take a step back and say, do you need this recap, or would a creative deck of 20 ideas for how to activate better next year be better for your brand? Or do you just want a jersey to hang up in your office because, to Kellen's point, like you just want to prove the partnership? So really just not being afraid to ask and actually listen to the answer, and then tweak your business practices to accommodate that.
Sandy, I have a follow-up. I was talking to Derek about this last night. He has clients that have been with the Broncos for 45 years or something like that, right? Right, Derek? How do you manage it year to year, right? When you have those long-standing partnerships, or you're inheriting a long-standing partnership, you're inheriting a new contact of that long-standing partnership. What do you do year to year? And then we'll talk about the schedule that may or may not happen today. But how do you manage year to year things? How do you approach that? And do you do it specifically? Do you do it broadly, year to year?
I think for us, we really try to treat each year uniquely, and I think we take a lot of pride, and I'm sure all of you do as well, that this, to Bridget's point, like it's a relationship, it's a marriage, it's not a contract on a piece of paper. Yes, that's our starting point, that's the baseline, but each year is unique. Their business objectives change. I mean, even through COVID, it was like, let's just get through this together and be good partners, and we're gonna win some of those, you're gonna win some of those, but like, how do we solve for the long haul and not each year? And so really being fluid and flexible with assets, and not holding their feet to the fire just because they said they wanted a branded space 5 years ago and that's what's on that piece of paper. I think we really feel like if we're at the point with a partner that we have to reference contract language or say, well, this is what you bought, that's we're way off base if we're ever getting to that point. So really just keeping the conversation open, truly stopping and listening to them and putting things into what will work for them is really what we try to do each year.
Okay, I'm going to transition and go back to all four of you again, so get a answer ready for this one. So we've talked a lot about, maybe that. We've talked a lot about managing partner relationship expectations, but it takes a village to activate internally, right? Village of a digital team, village of ops teams, village of tech teams. So it's one aspect to go and nail the partner conversation, which is important, right? But then how do you actually motivate the village? How do you make sure that your partners are part of the programming that's happening? Any recipes for success as it relates to orchestrating the village internally? Bridget?
Yeah, it's so important. I mean, we do our jobs because of everybody else within the organization, right? So I would say 3 things that come to mind is getting them involved early, getting our marketing team involved early, they're in marketing or they're in CR for a reason. They love to ideate, they have ideas of their own. So if you get them a part of the process early, it does help kind of get those juices out and understand what they want to accomplish and how we tie that back to a partner. I would also say, we actually bring people into our meetings with our partners from the community department, from the digital team. They like that. They like to hear directly from the brand what they're looking for, and now they're a part of that team. And then the follow-up to that is if it's a win, whether it's an activation or a new business, they're now a part of that win, and they're a part of the celebration of that win. And to me, those are the three things that motivate them the most to be a part of what we do.
What we like to do at the Seahawks is probably in the March timeframe, we like to get every department involved in a kind of a roundtable CP summit is what we call it. But every group in the organization, from ticketing to business intelligence, hospitality, game activation, everybody, they all tell us what their objectives are for the upcoming year, and they share the key inputs or key factors that will make their year successful. And then we, as a co-partnership team, do the same on behalf of our partners, whether it's key renewals that are coming up, what we expect they'll want to hear from us as far as new opportunities, what's important to them, partner surveys that we have. And that really starts, like you said, the buy-in from the other groups. We get them involved with the partners as well. I feel like most of our partners are on first-name basis with the other people on our team. So that's kind of where we start on that part. And then we also like to ask our partners if there's sweepstakes or promotions or whatever. We like to know how we rank with everybody else in this room, because as we're all very competitive, so are the other departments in our organization. And if we're trailing the Broncos on something, we like to share that with our social media team, like, hey, we're a few hundred leads behind, like let's do this to leapfrog them. And so that type of stuff really helps, just because we're also very competitive.
I think from our side, I echo what they shared already. I think the one thing we found was in talking to those other departments, their biggest piece of feedback for us a while back was we hear from every single individual person on their account. And so if you put yourself in their shoes, they're getting emailed on a scoreboard feature across the board or on tickets or whatever it may be. So we implemented kind of these internal focus areas. So each activation person oversees, there's like a B2B focus area, ticketing and events, creative and storytelling, and then digital and social. So within our internal team, we filter everything through that one department internally so that they have one point of contact, they have one expert, they have one person that understands their world, understands deadlines, understands concepts, and then they're not hearing from all 8 of us on individual accounts. We take it upon ourselves to kind of manage that internally, which has helped a ton just to streamline and be efficient. And then I think other than that, we just pride ourselves, I think we're all really good relationship people. That's why we're in this business with our clients. And so how do you take some of those relationship pieces and take them internally as well and not just externally? So we started during kind of pre-COVID a prize wheel. I don't know if you guys have, I'm sure your departments love all the like swag and partner items we get. So we actually put those in a bin, and Matt will kill me, but he's our internal host. So he wears like a Bob Barker jacket, has the microphone, and we go department to department and let them spin the wheel, and they get Bose headphones or, you know, an Apple gift card or whatever it may be. And it's just our way to kind of visit people and thank them for all they do to support us with our partners, and it's been really fun. So we're excited for Matt to make his 2022 debut back into the prize wheel now that we're back in person, but it's been a fun way to build those relationships.
I think for us too, it's almost a lot of the same principles that apply to how you manage and build relationships with clients. Just look at your internal departments kind of in that same lens. You know, I think in their worlds as well, right? In digital and production and social and community, their roles aren't getting any simpler either, right? Like I think we all understand that our worlds are getting crazy. So are theirs, right? They've got objectives that they're being measured against from the organization to go do more in the community or grow these platforms or what platforms, you know, those kinds of things. So really understanding, I think, from their perspectives as well, how are you being measured? What are you trying to do? What are your internal goals? Because I think a lot of times where we've seen the most friction is when partner is dead set on plan X, and that is not in line with the strategies that they're going to be monitored against. And so that's where you're jumping through hoops and trying to do all the things. And so I think when you can really understand and get them to appreciate or let them understand you're working with them and not against them, and I want to help make their life easier, not just be the group that always gives them more work to do. And I think that's sometimes how it's perceived. And then the other side of it, I think too, is bringing them in early and the right people in the right meetings. To Bridget's point, be careful who you bring into those meetings with clients, because not everybody's client facing, and so sometimes that can do more damage. But when you have people that you trust that are vetted, that are great in those other departments, bring them in. The other win, not only will it let the partner hear from them directly, it lets them walk a mile in your shoes and understand that sometimes those meetings aren't great. Right? I think people don't always have a great perception of what happens in our seats. And sometimes partners don't want to move. And the expert in the building can try to get them to move, and it doesn't happen. So you build some trust internally, and people kind of appreciate, like, oh shit, like, that wasn't easy. I don't want to be in another one of those. I got kind of awkward. So you can get some grace built out of that as well.
Okay, Sean, go to you first, and then we'll do the whole panel with this one. Big day today. Schedule's released. What are the first few steps that you do? Specifically with partners as a team, like what tactically are you kind of setting up other than answering phone calls? I'm just kidding. But Sean, why don't you take that one first? What happens next?
Yeah, so big day today, obviously. I think the first thing we got rolling is we're in year 2 of Trak, so I'll give, you guys are a huge help on that one. The deadlines and specs are ready to roll. Excitement from the partners as far as which game day sponsorship we'll have, which single game ticket, requests we'll have, sweet nights, all those different things. So that's the first step for us, is we're getting the assets out there, or the deadlines and specs out there, so the creative teams for the partners can get rolling, and that's step one.
For us, we're just trying to figure out how to send out the schedule while being on a swamp tour. So if anybody has figured that out, let us know, because we're working through that. Okay, great. So we'll send it tomorrow. It'll be fine. But no, in all seriousness, I think it really kind of kicks off the planning for us, like everybody in this room. So really start to plan out the fall, get a lot of those requests in for game-specific sponsorships or sweet nights or whatever it may be. And then we plan from here a partner kickoff call. So that's kind of one of the lingering things from Zoom that we've gotten a lot of feedback on, is we do just kind of an all-partner season kickoff call where we go through just reminders, themes, where they can find their specs and assets, questions they can ask, logos, campaigns. We have our graphics team usually come in and present that, and just kind of those top key reminders that maybe somebody that isn't as close to the partnership or can't fly in. I think a lot of teams do business summits. We don't do that at the Broncos. We just do it kind of on Zoom as kind of a quick hit reminder, but really getting all of that teed up and ready to go, just like the rest of you.
I will first find the holiday schedules, and then I will know what fights I need to pick with the in-laws and siblings over when and where and who's hosting and why Christmas needs to be January 14th, much like most of you. So I think it's very, very similar to this group, right? That really sets your strategy. I think our team is trying to be more proactive around, hey, here's the stuff that you have that is date specific. Here are the deadlines. Here's when we kind of need this information by. We're really trying to take that next step. So yeah, I think this is the big piece that lets you really, really schedule your fall.
Yeah, not too much more to add to that. It does help us understand how we can also schedule around our schedule for certain events that we like to host for partners. But beyond that, we call it playbook planning with Trak. Tomorrow morning, we're sending out everybody who has single game needs. Here's a schedule, give us your preferences, and we'll start to slot them in. But just like everybody else, it does really kick off the aggressive planning process.
Okay, one last question, and then we'll wrap up here. You've had really successful careers. What's your recipe for success in being successful in activation for the years you've been? What is some career advice for those of us who are newer to this, in creating a long and successful, and to be honest, not burned out career, right? In partnership activation at the level that you all are at. So all four of you, if you can take that one, then we'll kind of wrap up. Bridget?
Great question. I would say for me, it starts with relationships. It starts with relationships with your coworkers, not just in your department, but like we talked about in other departments as well. And then also obviously with your partners, like just building that trust and that relationship. We're also in this business because I think most of us like to be creative, right? So giving yourself time to be creative, we all get bogged down with meetings, right? And I like to block time on my calendar, my staff knows that, and they come in and they're like, is that a block or is that a meeting? Because I need to talk to you for 15 minutes. But I really try to block time on my calendar to just think about what's ahead, think about an issue that we need to kind of problem solve. One of my pet peeves is feeling behind. So I really try to think ahead and block time for myself. So I think between relationships and just giving yourself some time, that's helped me a lot.
Yeah, I get asked that in a handful of times, and I think I like to try to summarize it in one word. It's just mindfulness. Mindfulness of your priorities, what your why is, what the partner's whys are, just what your day looks like, your week looks like, your month, and being strategic and just your decision making for yourself. I think it's the self piece that's most important first, that then carries over to everything else. So mindfulness is kind of the first one that I always go to, and then as far as just being successful, I summarize that as just prioritize and execute. Like, what's the most important thing? There's so many things that we all have going on. All the clutter that you have in your work life can get into your mind and just slow everything else down. So mindfulness and prioritize and execute are the two things I really focus on.
I think I always say, like, work hard and be a good teammate. When people ask, how do you get into this business and how are you successful, it's those two things. I think there's not much else you can summarize it better into. I think one of the biggest things that I really try to do outside of that is just trust. I mean, we all love being trusted. There's nothing that feels better than being trusted, and so to trust people that are hired for whatever role it is in the organization, whether on partnership marketing or just in general, just trust them to do their job and show up and listen and be flexible and know what value they're bringing to the table. I think sometimes there's a lot of ego in this business, and to kind of just check that at the door and see what value everybody can bring goes a long way.
Yeah, I think for me, the first summit, second summit, we had Clint Bruce come in and speak, and I think he said it really, really well when he said, like, find your high why. Like, what's the reason at the end of the day that you do what you do beyond all else? I think really challenge yourself to define that. That will be the thing that allows you to not take yourself too seriously in lots of fronts. I think in this business, partners add a lot of stress, schedules add stress, other things add stress, right? There's just the normal stresses of the season and every Sunday and every game. And I think just realizing that, like, nothing's ever as good as it seems, it's never as bad as it seems, and we have an awesome platform to get to do what you get to do here, right? Like, for all of you that are young in your careers, the piece that I've always loved is you have an opportunity to sit down with all these brands, these agencies that, like, they lead marketing across the globe, and they want to talk to you, they want to engage with you. You offer them something of value. Like, take advantage of the platform and the brand that you have. The logo on the shirt will get you in the door. Ask all the questions for yourself, right? Sure, you're gonna do it on behalf of the club you work for, but find something selfish out of that as well. Like, that will help you grow your career, that will help you build networks and connections and people, and that will really, I think, inspire you to want to continue to do what you do with the platform you have.
Thank you. Great way to end, Kellen. Appreciate it, panel. Thank you. Safe on the look. 15-minute break and then back in here. Do you want to come up and say? Okay.
Yeah.